I have to say, we had a guest in studio with us Monday, and I had a wonderful time talking with Dr. Christine Pickup. She's a doctor of audiology. She joined us from Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. You can find them online at mountharrisonaudiology.com or give them a telephone call. The 208 area code 312-0957. They're located at 1218 Ninth Street, Unit 2 in Rupert. Diabetes and hearing loss are linked. She talked a little bit about this holistic approach to medicine when she was here the other day. If you or a loved one struggles with diabetes control, it could also be affecting your hearing. The inner ear is incredibly sensitive to changes in your blood supply. High blood sugars can cause hearing changes. So therefore, be sure you have your hearing screened today. 944, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 52. Yes, it's going to be a balmy warm one today. Yeah, balmy warm one today here in the Miami of the North, Twin Falls, Idaho. Hillary Clinton, story today out of the Washington Examiner. Headline, Hillary's support plummets among college students. You know, when I hear that, it bothers me. When I first read it this morning, I sat back in my chair and I let loose. Oh, I enjoy this to no end. Also, I saw a link this morning at Real Clear Politics. One of her allies, or sycophants in media, Andrea Mitchell, was saying on her program yesterday on MSDNC, and you wouldn't hear it. No one watches, right? If a tree falls in the forest or no one's there to hear it, doesn't make a sound, except that Real Clear Politics will pick up the snippets once in a while. So the larger audience at Real Clear Politics can tune in and actually see what Andrea Mitchell said. Andrea Mitchell said that Hillary Clinton is losing support among white women as well. Just seems like Hillary's campaign is imploding all the way around. Her popularity among the coveted college demographic is slipping away quickly, according to a poll released Tuesday afternoon by the California-based online textbook company Chegg. The long-presumed Democratic nominee has fallen 22 points in less than 3 months. The percentage of college students backing Bernie Sanders as their candidate of choice has climbed nearly 34%, putting the self-described socialist at 59% support among the undergraduate respondents. We've been taking care of all of our lives, and now we want free stuff when we leave college, too, and Bernie says it'll all be free. Asked who their second choice would be to secure the Democrat nomination, an equal number of college students, 29%, selected both Clinton and Biden. The latter half, who selected Biden, of course, still trying to get rid of the dope smoke in the room. Clinton also received the highest unfavorable rating in the Democratic field, with 47% of college students holding negative views of the former First Lady, and that outweighs her positive by a full 5%. 946, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story, News Radio 1310 KLIX, newsradio1310.com, which means you can hear us online anywhere all over the world. John Cornyn, Texas Republican, member of the U.S. Senate, appearing last night on Sean Hannity's program on the Fox News Channel, says it's time for an independent counsel to look into all of the perfidious email traffic that Hillary Clinton was involved in while Secretary of State.
I agree with you. It's time for a special counsel, but I don't suspect that Loretta Lynch is going to do what is a fairly well-known practice when we're dealing with high-ranking officials in administration.
Well, this is a test for her. There's no question about it. As you know, she succeeded perhaps the most political attorney general in the history of the United States, who was really, frankly, an embarrassment, Eric Holder. And this is a test for her, whether she, as a professional prosecutor that she is, she believes that politics ought to be subjugated to the law, the rule of law. And this is her chance. Clearly, there's a conflict of interest, the appearance of a conflict of interest. The FBI is looking into her email server in what is not a matter of inadvertence or negligence. It was by design, a private email server subject to being hacked by our enemies, China, Russia, other intelligence threats, and just violating laws with regard to open records and you name it.
John Cornyn, Republican U.S. Senator from Texas, saying it's time for a special prosecutor, if you will, or special counsel to step in. Well, we haven't seen one of those really since the days of Ken Starr, right? And even though Ken Starr was right about what he was doing, of course, the Clinton sycophants and media immediately attacked him. I remember reading in a magazine one day a story about him, and the liberals who selected the illustration put him in the clothes of a Puritan from back in the early days of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, which I'm sure is how they looked at him, chasing down the lies of the Clintons. But in their view, if you're a lefty, well, those are acceptable. I mean, the ends justify the means. Yesterday, Hillary Clinton gave a speech at a college where she talked about how unacceptable it is for women to be sexually abused and how we have to better listen to them and not take for granted when they claim they are. Never once did she talk about all of the women, the trail of women who are behind her husband who have made the same claim, whom she helped destroy because they were making those claims. And again, the left just keeps whistling as if nothing out there is going on. It's okay as long as they do it. Now, if Clarence Thomas was accused, then of course they jump all over him and make all sorts of scurrilous claims even until this day. But when Bill Clinton was accused multiple times, you may remember a candidate running for office 3 years ago, by the name of Herman Cain. Remember, he was accused, and everyone who ever knew Herman Cain said, this doesn't add up. But as soon as Cain then dropped out of the race, media didn't even bother to follow up on the claims, which shows you they were involved in the setup. Don't you understand? They're not playing to be fair. They're not playing as any part of a free press that we have in the First Amendment. They are part of the scam being pulled on the American people. Never forget it. Mike Gallagher coming up next, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls, 736-6563. Just before Mike Gallagher, I was sharing with you some thoughts about how media is really just part of the overall conspiracy. Most media, that is, your traditional establishment media in this country, is part of the conspiracy, I believe, to ultimately destroy the United States. And I think we see it on the local level as well. We had a discussion about that earlier this hour and in the last hour of the program. It's 9:55. Bill Colley with you on Top Story. Wrapping up today, 52. And, of course, I do want to point out Rush Limbaugh will follow news following Fox News. That's at 10 o'clock this morning. And God willing, the creek don't rise. I get to do this all over again tomorrow morning between 8 and 10 o'clock. We're scheduled to have Kelton Hatch in studio with us following the 9 o'clock news tomorrow. Just a reminder on that in case you haven't had a chance to talk to him about issues involving Idaho Fish and Game over the last few months. Couple of things. This is why I think that media is working exclusively for one side of the agenda in this country. Two things I happened to come across today before I was getting, while I was getting ready to come on air. Number one, there is a 10th video out from this organization that has been tracking the crimes of Planned Parenthood. Now, you've got folks in TV who say, heavily edited videos. The guy who put the videos together said, do you want to sit there and watch where everyone goes on a bathroom break? Of course they're edited. TV news is edited. They don't just take a camera, point it in one direction, and come out with a 2-minute package. Sometimes you have 90 minutes of video that is edited, boiled all the way down into just a couple of minutes on air. Most of you may not know that, but Benito Baeza can confirm that. He worked in television. I worked in television. That's how it's done. Because there's a lot of just banal stuff in there that wouldn't further the story. You got to get rid of it. You got to cut it down. Number two, media has just tried over the last several of these videos to ignore it altogether, to dismiss it. Radicalism, extremism, and pulling babies apart seems to me to be more extremist. So they've been dismissive of this entire story, yet the latest video, the executives admit, if this got out, that they admit they're breaking the law by selling body parts. They admit if the public gets wind of it, it'll be a public relations disaster and could spell the end of Planned Parenthood. So, what happens next? Well, the Democrats and their allies in establishment media circle the wagons and do their best to ignore the story, hoping that you don't ever pick up any details on it, keeping you in the dark, keeping you in that cage, if you will. When my grandmother had a bird when I was a kid, to keep it quiet overnight, she would throw a blanket around the cage. Well, that's what they're trying to do to you. That's what Rush Limbaugh refers to when he says low information. The less you have, they can neutralize you. Number 2, over at the Daily Signal today, lessons learned from Kim Davis about religious liberty and government accommodation. Roger Severino, the writer. Contrary to media reports, he says, Davis was not seeking some sort of showdown with the Supreme Court over the ability of same-sex couples to get marriage licenses in her county. All she asked for from the beginning was a way to opt herself out of the process so that she would not be forced to violate her sincere beliefs, religious beliefs about marriage. In January, in anticipation of a Supreme Court ruling that might force them to issue marriage licenses for same-sex couples, Davis and other clerks had asked the Kentucky legislature for an accommodation for objecting clerks. The request was ignored. Then in June, after the Supreme Court imposed a redefinition of marriage on the country, Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear, a Democrat, mandated that Davis and other county clerks issue licenses to same-sex couples, saying that any clerk who disagreed should resign. But Davis does not believe that the law requires her to choose between her faith and her job. So once more, media tried to tell you an entirely different story about this woman's actions, and media is trying to ignore what's going on at Planned Parenthood. I ask you once again, why do you bother to support your local newspaper when you know exactly the nefarious activities these people are involved in? News is straight ahead from Fox. Of course, as I mentioned, Rush coming up after that, Sean Hannity following news at 1 o'clock this afternoon, Glenn Beck following news from Fox at 4 o'clock, Dave Ramsey at 7 o'clock tonight.